So I watched a show in 24 hours. Really doing a lot with my life. So a couple of weeks ago, I get in my Safari feed that there's a show called What We Do in the Shadows, and Mark Hamill is going to be on it. And then after I read that, another article is recommended that it's going to be it's the best show on television of 2020 so far, and that it's hysterical, and anyone who's anyone has to watch it, right? And I think to myself, okay, well, I'll eventually get around to it. And I did get around to it, and I devoted a lot of time to it in a very short time span. And I thought that because of that, I'm basically required to review it, especially since I just completely knocked out a whole season in such a short amount of time. And I was very disappointed, to be honest. So before I decided to film myself talking, I thought I was just going to record and edit some stuff, but I didn't feel like doing that. But the point is that when I was just recording myself, the two main problems I kept on bringing about the show were A, the fact that there's just no storytelling going on in the show and there's just no substance to the characters, and the fact that the show is simply not long enough. I never thought that the amount of episodes in a season would actually affect the quality of a show, but that is certainly a problem here. And we'll start with the characters first. What We Do in the Shadows isn't concerned with storytelling, it's not concerned with character development. It's a show exclusively concerned with comedy, with how much it's going to make you laugh, and that's fine, but when a show is like that, you have to make sure that there is a consistency, a fine consistency maintained throughout the entirety of multiple seasons. And shows like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia have done that to a certain degree where the show can survive based off of that. And even then, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia does have some character to it. What We Do in the Shadows is exclusively pulpy. There's just no character development to be found, and because of that, you have to expect that the show is just hilarious throughout, and that's not the problem. Granted, there are some excellent episodes. The season opener is, as far as I'm concerned, as perfect as an opener you can have. Constant jokes throughout the entire episode. It's very hilarious, very creative. I was enjoying myself for 22 minutes. It was 22 minutes of pure bliss. And then later, when Mark Hamill comes in, you have this episode where one of the main characters runs away, and he takes up a different name, and he runs a bar, and he funds this girls' volleyball team, states run to the championship, and it's wonderfully creative, it's very funny, and it just works. However, you have certain episodes, also known as the rest of the series, that doesn't live up to the expectations that those two episodes set. And the fact is, the fact that one of them, the opener, is the best the series gets in the entirety of season 2 is just simply unacceptable. And that's really a problem when you have something like Colin's Promotion, which is the episode before the Mark Hamill one, which is entitled On the Run, if you're interested. Colin's Promotion is about a vampire named Colin, who would have figured, and the entire episode is built around the gag that he gets his power from draining people, from making them bored and making really dull comments. And that's basically Colin's gag throughout the entirety of the series. And it's not funny at all, it's extremely redundant, and I don't find it interesting, and I don't find it funny, which is more important because he's really a comic relief character. There's not even close to a resemblance of development for that character. And so when you have a whole episode built around that one character and there's only 10 episodes in a season, that's a major problem because you just have a complete dud of an episode in terms of both comedy and character, and that's 1/10 of your entire season. So that's just not going to cut it. And sure, there are some moments that the comedy shines through. There's one episode that isn't very particularly funny either, where there's a vampire Elvis, and that's funny, but the fact is, that's not enough to carry the entire show based off exclusively jokes. And to go back on sort of the reasoning why it needs more character in the show, you have to look at Nadia and Laszlo, which are the two main characters in the show. They're both vampires, they're lovers, and it seems as though the writers are intentionally trying to find ways to scoot around developing their character. For instance, in the second episode, Nadia's ex-lover comes back as a ghost, right? And you could see, oh, well, there could be a very simple episode here where even though that Laszlo can't touch the ghost, he's trying to fight the ghost because the ghost is trying to win back Nadia. Bam, character development for both. We see that Laszlo is in love with Nadia and wants to improve their relationship, and Nadia's dissatisfied. And hell, the episode completely ignores that, by the way. It completely ignores Nadia's ex-lover and goes to something completely different. It goes to each of the characters meeting their ghost selves because they were at one time killed. And Nadia, her ghost is still alive, still roaming the earth because she feels that her human self is unfulfilled with Laszlo. And this is just ignored. It's nowhere to be found throughout the entire season. Why? Why? I can't tell you. Because that's so perfectly written as to create a divide between those characters and have an interesting relationship between them for the series, and it's just bypassed. It's non-existent. And hell, even later in the series, in episode 9, when Laszlo is captured by witches, it is very clearly stated that Laszlo has had intercourse with multiple other women while being in a relationship with Nadia. And this, once again, is just nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found in actual serious dialogue. It's only used for jokes, and because of that, the characters feel like sponges. There's no substance or meat to them. They just are so pulpy that they fall flat. For me, the highlight of the show is Guillermo. He is the vampire's familiar. He does everything for the vampires. He helps them out around the house, yada, yada, yada. He even saves their lives. And that is the important part about Guillermo. And by the way, that development is built in the first episode, which once again is phenomenal. You have a very strong foundation for Guillermo. Not only is he unappreciated, but he also has to deal with the fact that he is a very serious threat to vampires. He could pose a very serious threat to everyone he lives with, specifically because they are absolute dimwits. 100% of the time. He could theoretically kill them and move on and kill other vampires. There's nothing there for him. And he has to deal with that throughout the season. And granted, he does have very specific situations that seem to be building upon who he is as a character, but those situations just are flat out not endearing, which is what the show needs in a desperate time of need. When Guillermo accidentally joins a clan of vampire hunters, the show falls flat in terms of jokes. It's not even chuckle-worthy at that point. You have Daryl from The Office showing up, and his character and the group of vampire hunters are just boring. They don't leave an impact on you. Not one of them says a funny line throughout the entirety of their stay within, I believe, 2 episodes, maybe even 1. And when the show needs to be funny, when the dialogue needs to be engaging, the show falls flat. It doesn't live up to where it needs to be. And later, when Guillermo visits another familiar that he knows, and she becomes a vampire and says that she can make him a vampire, that also is a situation where she and her whole clan is very obnoxious, and the jokes they make aren't very funny, so the dialogue exchanges and basically Guillermo's entire development suffer because of the lack of well-written dialogue and jokes in those certain situations. And then the final equation to this piece of the puzzle is Nandor, who is another vampire who only receives development on the opposite side of Guillermo, because he doesn't appreciate Guillermo, but then he does. But that really only helps out Guillermo's character. Oh, and by the way, that happens for like 2 seconds in episode 8. So it makes you ask the question, what are the writers doing? Well, obviously, A, they're complacent in what they're doing. They don't care that they are not doing these characters any justice by making them interesting in meaningful ways. They're just trying to make them endearing through their set of jokes. But the jokes aren't that funny and the characters aren't that likable, so that tactic isn't really working. And so the natural solution would be to make the series longer. When you do that, and you actually have time to build the characters, not every single exchange has to be meaningful. When you have Guillermo having a meaningful moment, a meaningful revelation that he is not getting realized enough as a familiar, then you don't have to rely on that moment alone carrying the whole season. When you have 10 episodes and you don't have that much development with Guillermo, every single moment counts. Every single revelation, every single moment he has to be perfect. That doesn't happen in a longer season. You're allowed to have a certain exchange not work as well as it should. And guess what? That also, in the end, helps the comedy. Because when you have an episode like Colin's promotion that, hey, may cater to some fans of Colin out there and his sense of comedy, but also kind of brings down the series in terms of the masses who don't really find him funny, well, guess what? That's fine, because that's only one bad episode in a whole series of other episodes. but the series ain't getting longer and it's not getting different. So I'm gonna go do something else with my life now. Bye bye.